Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Napoleon, and today we're back with another Enlisted video. Today we're going to be doing the squad history of Axis Berlin premiums, and before we start, I'll just have to tell you guys that most of the stuff in Axis Berlin, including the non-premiums, will also have a lot of stuff that we don't know, and that's because there were not enough documents to support the history, so therefore most of the stuff were lost in history. Not to mention the fact that most of the Volkssturm units that we will eventually get onto in Berlin really don't have a history. And, yeah. Anyway, let's get started with Axis Berlin premiums. The first unit we have up is the 1st Volkssturm Company of the 3115 Stahlstadt Battalion. Before we even get into the first Volkssturm Company, let's just talk about the Volkssturm. The Volkssturm grew inspiration from the old Prussian Landwehr, or the Landsturm, from 1813 to 1815, that fought in the wars of liberation against Napoleon, mainly as guerrilla fighters and sometimes regular troops. Plans to form a Landsturm national militia in eastern Germany was a last resort to boost fighting strength and was first proposed in 1944 by Chief of the General Staff Heinz Guderian. The army did not have enough men to resist the Soviet onslaught, so additional categories of men were called into service, including the non-essential jobs which were previously deemed outfit, or unfit. These were overaged, underaged, and recovering from wounds. The Volkssturm has existed on paper since 1925, but it was only after Hitler ordered Martin Bormann to recruit 6 million for this militia that this army actually became a physical reality. When the regime, Nazi regime of course, formally established the Volkssturm on the 25th of September, it was not announced to the public until the 16th of October 1944. The official launch date was 2 days later, 18th October 1944, and was chosen by Heinrich Himmler himself, to invoke parallels with the popular uprising which, according to popular legend, ended French rule over Germany and coincided in the Battle of Leipzig on the same date in 1813. Despite this appeal for this last-ditch effort, the intended strength of 6 million members was never ever attained. These militia units were effective, but they were not, considering the fact that they didn't have enough strength in numbers, but it was also a fantasy. During the early stages of the Volkssturm, it was apparent that the units lacked morale and would also lack combat effectiveness to generate fanaticism. Volkssturm units were placed under direct control of the local Nazi party officials. The new Volkssturm will become a nationwide organization with Heinrich Himmler as the replacement army commander, responsible for the armament and training of the Volkssturm. Although notably under party control, the Volkssturm were placed under the Wehrmacht's command, or the German army, when engaged in army actions, or that these people's army will not be able to withstand the full onslaught of any modern army, and modern in terms of 1944/45, Hitler issued the following orders to the end of 1944. Quote, Volkssturm emergency and reserve units are available together with regular units in any battle sector, mixed with battle groups, or Kampfgruppens, will be formed under unified command, and so to give the Volkssturm emergency and reserve units stiffening and support. End quote. Obviously, like with most situations during the war, this was usually not the case, but it does give you a good interpretation of how unprepared the Volkssturm were. That said, some of the Volkssturm did see action. One example, now we're going on to the 1st Volkssturm Company, was the unusual Volkssturm unit of the Battle of Berlin, which was the 3115 Stahlstadt Battalion. It was comprised of 770 men, primarily First World War veterans, so they had actual military experience, in their late 50s, who were reasonably fit factory workers, with experienced officers, unlike most Volkssturm units, who were quite unequipped and untrained. This one was obviously well-trained and well-equipped, since some of them literally fought a war a few decades ago. It was formed into 3 rifle companies, a support company with 2 infantry support guns, 4 infantry mortars, and heavy machine guns, a heavy weapons company with 4 Soviet M20 howitzers, and a French Debon 220mm mortar. These were obviously, the latter was obviously, the former was obviously captured, while the latter was obviously used in First World War. The battalion first engaged Soviet troops at Friedrichsthal on the 21st of April and saw the heaviest fighting over the following 2 days. It held out until the 2nd of May, by which time it was just down to 50 rifles and 2 light machine guns. The survivors fell back to join other Volkssturm units. 26 men from the battalion were awarded the Iron Cross. And as Allied bombings continued and Soviet artillery continued to bomb the city of Berlin, the final fighting against Nazi Germany apparently was led by Soviet battle-hardened troops from Stalingrad, most of which served in Stalingrad, and Volkssturm units who were barely trained. Obviously, you shouldn't see much of a fighting chance, but that said, these Volkssturm units did fight somewhat like terrorists, in the sense that the Wehrmacht had to fight the terrorists, quote-unquote terrorists/partisans during Operation Barbarossa, and like terrorists, the Red Army soldiers called these Hitler Youth formations and Volkssturm as terrorists and partisans. Obviously, most of them would not have a good fate. But that said, that is all it for the Volkssturm and the 3115 Stelldatz Battalion. Next, we have the Kummersdorf Panzer Battalion of the Panzer Division Müncheberg. The Panzer Division Müncheberg was formed on the 8th of March 1945 in Müncheberg, Germany. The majority of the division staff and panzer troops were drawn from the 103rd SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, which has been dissolved 3 days before. The battalion commander, Major General Momert, was placed in command of the division. The Müncheberg division received several Alfs J Panther tanks equipped with IR systems, as well as a company of Panzergrenadiers equipped with the same IR systems. These divisions received several of Super Heavy Jagdtigers as well as several Tiger 2s, and the last 5 Tiger 1s to be sent to the front. By the 12th of March, the division's strength was 6,836 men, and on the 18th of March, the men from an infantry battalion of the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, also known as the LAH, was used to bolster the division's strength. As the advancing Soviet forces near Müncheberg, the partly formed Müncheberg Division was ordered to move east to mobilize reserve for the 9th Army, which was part of the Army Group Vistula. The town of Kronstein lies roughly 60 kilometers from the east of Berlin. Hitler declared that the town has to be fortified, and therefore it was. The fortress was attacked by Marshal Vasily Chuikov, the same general of the 65th Army that defended Stalingrad, and therefore he decided to attack on the 31st of January, and the Panzer Division was attempting to secure the bridgehead across the Oder. The bridgeheads were then assembled to the south and north, but the Soviet forces could not consolidate their bridgehead until Kronstein was captured under Chuikov's command. Hesitated to attack the well-defended forces, Chuikov decided just to surround it. Despite Soviet attacks, the narrow strip of land between Brussie's 9th Army and Kronstein doubled the Kronstein corridor. Notice all of this information is where the Panzer Division Müncheberg is. Despite the repeated Soviet attacks, the Soviet plans to counter an inner and outer encirclement. The inner encirclement succeeded quickly, while Müncheberg was sent into action on the 22nd of March along with 39th Panzer Corps. By 25th of March, the outer encirclement was completed, trapping several German units, including a platoon from the Müncheberg. On the 27th of March, the Germans launched counteroffensive aimed at reopening the corridor. Müncheberg was then subordinated to, once again, 39th Panzer Corps for the attack. The Corps was not able to break through, therefore Müncheberg and the rest of the German troops in the city were trapped. Then another Soviet counterattack hit the 20th Panzer Division, Panzergrenadier Division, and soon the attack was completely destroyed. After the failure of the Kronstein counterattack, Müncheberg was pulled out of the line and refit. On the 16th of April, the Red Army launched its offensive against the Alta Oder, aiming at capturing Berlin. From this date until the war, Müncheberg was in constant combat. On the 20th of April, Müncheberg, together with the formation of the 11th SS Panzergrenadier Division, Northland fell back to Berlin itself. The division was then pushed back into Berlin itself by the advancing Soviet forces. The remnants of the division was then positioned to the northeast sector of Berlin, north of the river Spree. By this stage, the division roughly maintained a dozen tanks and about 30 half-tracks. On the 26th of April, Müncheberg, along with Nordland, the 11th SS Volunteer Grenadier Division, aka the Northland, was ordered to attack through Trompbomb Airport and Noklund. With its last 10 panzers, the Müncheberg initially made progress, but after Soviet counterattacks, fierce Soviet counterattacks, the advance halted. On the 27th of April, Hitler ordered the flooding of the Berlin Underground to slow the advancing Red Army. Hitler ordered to resulted in the drowning of many German soldiers and civilians who were taking refuge in the tunnels from Allied bombing. As the division fought on in Wilmsdorf, the encampment of Berlin was completely, and the remnants of the Müncheberg were trapped. On the 30th of April, Hitler committed suicide. The Müncheberg, the 18th Panzergrenadier Division, along with its few Tiger IIs and from the heavy SS Panzer Division 103, was engaged in heavy fighting near Wollstock and Hallstein train stations and on Königsstraat. On the 1st of May, the division was then pushed back to the Tangrad and then fighting to defend the Zoo Flak Tower, the shelter of thousands of civilians. The Müncheberg's last operating tank, Tiger I, was abandoned on the Unter Oder Liebestrabe, 100 miles from the Brandenburg Gate. The division, along with the remnants of the 18th Panzer Grenadier Division, attempted to escape from Berlin to the west to surrender to the Americans, obviously. On the 3rd of May, the divisions had reached the crossing point over the Halve in the Spandau, under fire by Red Army units. Those who made it across the bridge found they were surrounded by Soviet units, so if you haven't figured it out by now, the Soviets had them trapped. And on the same day, the division was entirely wiped out. And that is it for the Kummersdorf Panzer Battalion of the Panzer Division of Moltberg. An interesting thing is that Kummersdorf is named for the site that the Germans would use to detect secret weapons, most notably secret tanks. For example, the E series and most prominently the Maus and the Tiger 1 and 2s, which were also tested at Kummersdorf. But that is all it for this unit. Next, we have the 652nd Grenadier Regiment of the Infantry Division Berlin. The Infantry Division Berlin was formed on the 1st of February 1945 in Donbritz as emergency formation for Military District 3. It was assembled from 2 regiments of this 166th Infantry Division in occupied Denmark. While the division received a total number of 309, it was only referred to Infantry Division Berlin, since literally the number 309 really wasn't used. I don't understand the logic. From April of 1945 as Infantry Division Greater Berlin this time, the Infantry Division's only commander was Heinrich Volkssturm, who initially held the rank of colonel and was then promoted to Major General. And from 1st of April 1945, nothing is known about him. The Infantry Division Berlin was then promptly destroyed in the Kalbau Corridor around 29th of April 1945. That is all it for the Infantry Division Berlin, and that is all that is written on record, so I don't know anything much about the Infantry Division Berlin, except for it was only an infantry division in name. Next, after the Infantry Division Berlin, which was pretty quick, we have 3rd Group of JG4, or Jagdgeschwader 4. 2nd Group of JG4 was formed on the 12th of July 1944 from elements of Sturmstaffel 1. The Gruppen was equipped with modified heavily armored FJ 190s or Focke-Wulf 190s, A8 or R2s, while the heavy fighting armored fighter proved effective against heavy bombers of the American Air Force. They were also proved vulnerable against fighter escorts and hence suffered heavy losses. 3rd Group of JG4 was also formed on July 1944 in Romberg. In common with other fighters, these units engaged with the air defense of the Reich operations. On the 11th of September 1944, 2nd Group, escorted by 3rd Group, intercepted a U.S. bombing raid over Clements, attacking the 100th and 95th Bomber Groups. The The group claimed 13 destroyed bombers intercepted by the 339th and the 55th Fighter Groups, which the American Air Force responded by sending in the 55th Fighter Groups. JG-4 was then severely mauled, losing 21 pilots and 9 more seriously injured during the mission. On October 1944, 4th group of JG-4 was then formed into elements of JG-5, equipped with Messerschmitt's Bf-109Gs and Ks. On the 2nd of November, the Sturm Group, or the squadron, in conjunction with the 4th JG-3, intercepted another American bomber formation in the Leipzig area. The 2nd group of JG-4 attacked the 457th Bomber Wing and destroyed 9 B-17 bombers, although the group then lost another F-16 Focke-Wulf 190s out of the 22 to commit to the mass American bombing to the mass American fighter escorts. From November of 1944 onwards, JG-4 operated from Frankfurt, and then it also took heavy losses flying against the Allied air advance. Apart from a few units, heavy losses meant that the air group had virtually ceased to exist by late November of 1944, and then it was transferred to Braunstein. In December of 1944, the remnants of the 2nd group of JG-4 was then to carry out same fighter and ground operations as other units, and in early 1945, 2nd group, equipped with the Focke-Wulf 190, A9, and later D9 fighters, was ordered to destroy Allied planes during Operation Bonaparte in the Netherlands, which the idea was to just attack the Allied planes on the ground, which really didn't succeed. The idea was that on the 1st of January 1945, JG-4 and other units again would take heavy losses in the attempt. With 75 JG-4 aircraft tasked with various attacks attacking the Lacan airfield during Operation Bonaparte. 1st, 2nd, and 4th groups were hit by heavy anti-air fire, and the mass formation became shattered and impossible to coordinate. And then the American fighters arrived and then cleaned everything up. By the late January of 1945, JG-4 deployed in the Gruppen-Leuchtturm area until the end of the war in May. On the 21st of January 1945, four groups of JG-4 were switched to Luftflotille 6 on the Eastern Front to fight the Soviets, and pitchfork whole-scale into ground attack missions for which the unit was ill-equipped and the pilots were untrained. By early February 1945, 2nd group of JG-4 was located in Nassau in the defense of Cottbus. Although nearly 400 vehicles were claimed destroyed, losses during this month escalated, the units with some 57 aircraft destroyed, 26 pilots missing and 14 wounded. Unknown pilots are missing, but since 26 pilots were killed, then we can also assume that the same number was missing. First group of JG-4 was dissolved in March of 1945 and mustered to the unit personnel as the infantry followed. Elements of JG-4 flew their last sorties against the Soviet armies and the air forces around Berlin in late April of 1945. The unit then withdrew to Schleswig-Holstein area and disbanded in the 8th of May 1945. For those who don't know where Schleswig-Holstein is, it's literally the border between Germany and Denmark. The current day border, of course. But on the German side. But that is it for JG-4. Let's move on to the 19th Panzer Regiment of the 10th Panzer Division. Oh wait! I'm not going to be doing that because I already did the 10th Panzer Division in Axis Moscow. All you have to do is to look at Axis Moscow. That said, the one in Axis Moscow, all the history goes up to 1943. Nothing is known about after that. That said, according to Enlisted, the division according to Enlisted, quote, the division was formed on February 1st, 1943 in southern France. In summer of 1944, it was then sent to Normandy area to counter the Allied landings. In fall, the division participated in the counteroffensive against the Nijmegen salient, where it suffered heavy losses during, Operation Market Garden. After rebuilding was fought in Alsace in January of 1945, the division was then sent to the Eastern Front to fight against the Red Army at the Battle of Berlin. Nothing much is said. I don't know how they got the information, because I couldn't find it, but they can list a word for it. And since Enlisted has done a pretty good history of the history of what they're talking about, you better believe it could be true. Next, we have the 51st Panzergrenadier Regiment of the 18th Panzer Division. Well, Panzergrenadier Division. The German 18th Infantry Division was formed on the 1st of October 1934 as Infantry Fuhrer 3 in Enlisted, and renamed the 18th Infantry Division on 15th of October 1935. Mobilized in August of 1939, it participated in the invasion of Poland, and in 1940 in the Battle of France. After the French campaign, the division was motorized and designated the 18th Motorized Division the 18th Motorized Infantry Division on the 1st of November 1940 and served on the Eastern Front for the remainder of the war. It fought on the Eastern Front sectors from June of 1941 until January of 1941. Fought on the Eastern Front from the Northern sector from January 1942 until 1943, and then it redesignated to the 18th Panzergrenadier Division. On June of 22nd, 1943, the division was then redesignated 18th Panzergrenadier Division, which I already said. It fought on the Eastern Front Northern sector again from June of 1943 until October of 1943, and then it fought on the Eastern Front of the Central sector until October 1943 until September 1944. It was then decimated in the Soviet 1944 summer offensive, also known as Operation Bagration, and the remnants of the division fought in Eastern Prussia and in the Battle of Berlin. The survivors then tried to fight their way out of Berlin on the 2nd of May 1945, when Berlin surrendered to the Soviets. That is all it for the Infantry Division, or Panzergrenadier Division 18. There's nothing much that we know about its performance in Berlin. So let's move on to the next one. Finally, for Axis Premiums, we have the 101st Panzer Regiment of the Fuhrer Grenadier Brigade. The Fuhrer Grenadier Brigade was raised in April of 1943 to act as a second guard unit for outer perimeter of the Hitler's Wolf's Lair in East Prussia. Despite the idea, Hitler's bodyguards were drawn mostly from the SS. A small detachment was then drawn from the Volkssturm regiment to become Hitler's private army and bodyguard, apparently. This unit was renamed the Fuhrer Brigade or Fuhrer Escort and was eventually to be expanded to division size. In 1944, the division was reorganized as an armored brigade as Volkssturm. The personnel were drawn from the Große Deutschland Division, a pool of hand-picked personnel, and in October of 1945, it was designated to 27th Corps of the 4th Army in descent to the vicinity of the Eastern Front in Goldbrunn. Erfahrt Dagen, Großweisten, from October 21st to 23, the brigade operated in conjunction with the 5th Panzer Division and the Roman Goring Division. Between December 11th to 17th, the brigade was then sent to participate in Operation Habsburg. The brigade's composite did not match standard unit configuration, meaning that this unit was not a proper unit, if that makes sense. The Große Deutschland never fought on the Eastern Front in 1944 and 1945. It did see action in the 1940 campaign, but as part of the Große Deutschland, FGB, which is Fuhrer Grenadier Brigade, was permitted to wear cuff title insignia. So basically what the Germans did was on the cuffs of your uniforms you have the division that you're from. In this case, because FGB, Fuhrer Grenadier Brigade, was part of the Große Deutschland, they wore the Große Deutschland cuffs, which really just means that on their hands or on their cuffs of their uniforms, it says the words Große Deutschland. While the SS obviously had theirs on the left. So, Große Deutschland and SS cuffs were different in the sense that the Große Deutschlands were there on the right, while the SS wore them on the left. In 1945, the brigade was awarded their own title cuffs, just to make the situation even more confusing. FGB was then sent to the 7th Army Reserve for Operation Habsburg. The brigade pulled back from battle in early January. On paper, it was then enlarged to the division and assigned to Army Group Vistula. It was then reassigned to the 6th Army Group, and the Fuhrer Grenadier Division, apparently at this point, surrendered to U.S. forces in May of 1945 near Vienna, Austria. And that is all it for the history. literally nothing else that I can find about this unit. That is all it for the Axis Premiums of Axis Premiums Berlin, and the squad history, of course, and we will be going next to Axis Non-Premiums in the next episode, of course. But have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode in which we talked about Axis Non-Premiums for Berlin, of course. Now, before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video. I would be honored if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, more videos are coming out, so it is a good idea to click on that notification button. Anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.